The dead are not gone. The
Mm,
ancestors are not gone. Your past lives are not over.
right.
Your future lives have already happened. When you unbind time in a kind of Aquarian way, the interconnected holism of all things becomes a guiding principle.
So, if you enjoyed part one of my interview with Mark Borax, this is where things get really interesting. We talk about the nodes and past lives, we talk about the mystery school and where his work is going. Mark Borax has such a different perspective on astrology. He wrote the book 2012, Crossing the Bridge to the Future, which is one of my favorite astrology books because it's so unique. It is so different that he takes his experience as becoming an astrologer and all the things he learned in the mystery school with Ellias Lonsdale, and he makes it into some compelling, interesting narrative. I hope you really enjoyed this part two of our interview. And if you want to get his book, I'll put links in the description below. You explain, I believe it was in 2012, the precession of the equinox and how they are, actual things that are happening in physical space, and the wobble of axis of the earth that creates this precession of the equinox. And it takes 26,000 years to go around the entire zodiac. There's so much idealism with Aquarius, the concept of Aquarius, humanitarianism, but it's also this technology. And how can we integrate with technology and have it make the world a better place? Well, what about this age of Aquarius? What do you think? I'll stop there.
It's a rough passage. And in terms of timing, I agree with other astrology-minded people who feel that we entered the cusp of Aquarius in the 1960s, just like the song says, from
Mm,
Hair. And I feel like more officially we crossed into the age in 2012.
mm,
And and I don't hold hard and fast to those dates because about most things astrological, I'm not a hard and fast astrologer. I'm way more of an improvisational, creative one. But as to what it all means, and I go into this in the Aquarius chapter of the new book, I see Aquarius as the interconnected holism of all things,
mm,
that the universe is a sentient living being, that Earth is a sentient living being,
mm.
that just like cells in your body have their own individual function, they also function with the overall cells of all your body. And I feel it's the same with humanity. Humanity is one single organism. You and
Mm.
I are cells in that organism. We're part of Earth, and Earth is part of a solar system, so that even the gravity of Earth is affected by the gravity of Pluto and Neptune and Uranus. It's a great dance. And the interconnected wholeness of all things is something that becomes pretty evident to people who drop acid or take ayahuasca, as a lot of us did in the 1960s, and as a lot of us are still doing.
Mm.
And when you're not in that entheogenic medicine journey state where it's so obvious that all things are interconnected, the living are connected with the dead are not gone, the
Mm.
ancestors are not gone, your past lives are not over,
Right.
your future lives have already happened. When you unbind time in a kind of Aquarian way, the interconnected holism of all things becomes a guiding principle in the current day and age, especially for people who are into television and mainstream media. It can take quite a journey for someone to wean themselves from the segregated corporate view of reality into the Aquarian holism, which is one of the tasks I set myself in writing the Aquarian chapter of the current book. I really want to reach people with not just the utopian Aquarian dream, but
Mm.
with what it's up against. And I say this in the book and probably elsewhere, since each age of the great year in astrology is more than 2,000 years, we could call the early part of the Aquarian age that we're in now the everything but Aquarius age, because until those things are
Yeah.
dramatized in the karmic theater, you can't get to what's beyond it. Until humanity gets fed up with the broken, segregated, bigoted,
Mm,
corporate view of the war machine, which is controlling the world
yeah.
economy. It's hard to get to the other side of Aquarius.
Yeah, that's very shadowy. It's something and I'm wondering, like Pluto going into Aquarius, where I'm feeling like that could be the point where once Pluto exits Aquarius, it's done its thing, that could be another marker of a beginning of this Aquarian age. There's going to be so much more happening that's negative before the positive can come through. But if you look at the age of Pisces, 2000 years, I mean, the great thing were all these amazing teachers, all this incredible religious doctrine that could be beautiful, but then it gets used inappropriately. And then there's a lot of pain and suffering. So we can't go into an age thinking it's going to be like the hair concept, which is so beautiful, right? Or all these things like where we want what we want. But we have to be understanding that we have a human experience, and part of it is suffering and raising above suffering, getting to a different place of understanding. And the ultimate idea, like I think that you're saying too, is that Aquarian dream of, we are together. We can do something better for humanity when we work together and see that there's no difference between you and me. Or also your astrology, where you say, I go into that person and I can feel them. That's the empathy that I think we need to have integrated into everyday life.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I feel that the 20-year period that Pluto's going to be moving through Aquarius is the make it or break it period for humanity on Earth. It
Yeah.
feels to me that where we end up towards the end of this 20-year period, which has just begun now,
Yes.
is going to determine whether there's a future for life on Earth and for
Yeah.
humanity. And so I'm using all of my power and my wisdom to push for the side of creating that bright future that humanity has, that it's not lost yet. The one where enough people awaken in the world to realize that we came for love and
Yeah.
everything else is secondary.
Absolutely.
And if we get that, which is the same lesson that the great ones have taught us throughout history in their own way, they were all saying the same thing. And so we don't really need a new lesson in
Mm.
this Aquarian age. We just need to put the old lesson to work. We
Yes.
just need to live that truth, not just talk about it. And the way I do that, it comes down to my readings. It comes down to my family, my relationship with my wife, how I live my life. Um, I have my own darkness, my own karma, my
Mm.
own past life horrors that I was only slightly aware of until quite very recently, when one of my past lives began speaking to me for the
Mm.
first time. I had known of that life for 30 years, but never had connected with it. And so I'm no stranger to darkness, to the intensity that goes on inside human beings. When I'm doing a reading or teaching a class, or doing podcasts, or even living my life,
Mm.
I'm using a combination of X-ray vision to look into what a person is suffering, where
Mm.
a person is broken, where they're caught, where they're maybe in a state of torment, and an unconditional acceptance of their ability to rise above that, to
Yeah.
turn that around. And that combination of compassionate, unconditional acceptance and penetration of the intense shadow, that's my way of doing life and doing readings.
Oh, that's beautiful. My theory, and I wanted to hear what you think about this, is to bring it back to the ruby heart of the dragon and the nodes, is that one of my passions is past life information. Like my mother-in-law, she is Italian. She's the one that got me into astrology in the first place. And she's got psychic abilities and she sees past lives. So I was always like wanting to tell me, tell me, tell me. So she never did. So I'm like, okay, fine, I have to figure it out myself. And so my theory is that you can connect. So I believe we've had multiple past lives in different lots and lots and lots and lots and lots. But in each life, we can only have access to the ones from the South Node. So they're past life experiences that have a correlation to the concepts or the energies of that South Node. So for example, like mine is in Pisces, South Node Pisces. So I can connect to lifetimes over my experience where I've been focusing on it. I have had visions or memories or feelings that relate to very Piscean things, Piscean shadow stuff. But I don't feel like those are my only past lives. I just feel like those are the ones I have access to because I'm a Virgo North Node, and that's what I have to go towards, and that I need to remember those lessons where I might have made mistakes or whatever. So your Cancer South Node, is that correct?
Mhm.
So do you feel like they're related to the Cancer South Node experiences?
I came of age at the height of the New Age in
Mm.
Santa Cruz in the 1980s. West Coast spirituality, the spiritual marketplace got flooded with readers and astrologers, and I noticed that many people who had gone through past life readings had been told that they were William Shakespeare or
Oh,
Joan
yeah.
of Arc. In the way that I work with past lives, there's two people alive on the planet now who could have been William Shakespeare or Joan of
Mm.
Arc. I'm kind of rigorous, and that's why I love what you said, which is when I get a hit of what a person's past life might have been, I hold it as a possibility until I get two separate corroborations.
Mm.
My very first information in the subject of past lives was when I was 9 years old, and I used to haunt the Stratford, Connecticut town library, and I stumbled upon a book called something like the Case of Bridie Murphy, or the Strange Case of Bridie Murphy. And this was a woman in modern time who, under hypnosis, revealed a past life in Ireland, and she talked about streets and
Mm.
houses and stores that weren't there anymore, but ancient maps showed were accurate.
Wow.
And as a 9-year-old kid, I was fascinated. That was sort of my first introduction to metaphysics.
Mm.
And so in general, I'm very dubious. I don't know any past life readers well enough to recommend them. When clients
Yeah.
ask, do you recommend anyone? I don't know who are the real ones, because I think that the majority of people who say that they're past life readers or that they do past life regressions um, are not worth going to. That's just my sense of having come of age during California New Age spirituality at its height in the 1980s. I'm dubious in general.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's one of the benefits I had of my mother-in-law saying no, is that
Yeah,
I had to search for it myself, and it's under a lock and key for a reason. You have to work really hard to get to those points because probably the things you're going to access, you have to be ready to access them
yep,
because there's points where I've accessed things and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's scary." Like I don't want that's not me. Because that's that first house, 12th house thing again. Like the 12th house is like your spirit. Like there's more to you than just this physical incarnation of this body. And that's the nodes as well. But yeah, I think it's something you have to work towards yourself, finding in you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you increased my respect for your mother-in-law when you got to the part of the story where she refused to tell you. I said, yes,
Yeah.
that's a legitimate past life reader.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Um, the next thing regarding what you can and can't find from the south nodes of the birth chart or elsewhere, um, I think compared to almost any astrologer on earth, I am way less glued and dependent to the birth chart.
Mm.
And for me, the only purpose of the birth chart is like the purpose of a telescope. It
Mm.
it's not the thing itself. When you pick up a telescope or a microscope, it's not about, oh my God, this is an amazing unit. Let's talk for the next 30 years about the telescope. No, you want to see through the telescope. So
Right.
for me, the way most astrologers deal with the birth chart is almost like idol worship. Um,
Mm.
it's like the example I sometimes use is there's this romantic couple in a Swiss chalet, and there's a window, and the guy is looking at the window and saying, "Oh my God, look at this window. It's 3 meters by 2 meters square or rectangle. It has oak and maple trim, and each pane of glass is about 6 inches long." And the woman's saying, "Look at the fucking mountains.
Yeah, right.
Look at the sunset. Why are you looking at the window?" That's how I envision most astrologers. They're so hung up on the window. And so for me, the only purpose of the birth chart, and I say this sometimes, which is um, I have done many readings where I don't mention a single astrology detail. I never mention a sign or a planet or a house or an aspect. When somebody wants to know about those things, I'm happy to go into them. When somebody says, "I don't just want you to read my chart, I want to learn a little bit about
Yeah,
astrology," they don't want to know just what I have to say. They also want to know a little bit of why I'm saying it. I'm happy to go in that direction, but I find the vast majority of my clients couldn't give a shit about why
yeah,
I'm saying things. They just want me, they're not paying all that money for me to talk about the chart. They want me to
right.
talk about them.
I agree 100%.
And so, in terms of what you can and can't find from the South Nodes or any other part of the chart, I feel that if you juxtapose yourself at the right metaphysical angle, that you could go through any part of the chart and find
Mm.
out almost anything. It's like a telescope. If I hold your birth chart to the right part of you, I can get to past lives. It might happen through the South Nodes, through the degree at the root of your chart, through your Saturn. It might happen through many other areas. I kind of basically did some of that when I wrote about the sun signs in the new book, um, by going deep into them, going way into them,
Hmm.
and just even with the sun, even with just one single thing, there's so much to find out depending upon how deep is the person looking.
And that brings us back to the book because the sun signs are where people can get really hung up on just the singularity of the one thing. And
Yeah.
also in 2012, that was part of the concept. It was the blend. Another thing we don't talk about much at astrology is that we are all these signs. And that's what I love at the beginning of the Ruby book is that you say that it's like you need to read all of them because you're all of them. You know, you're if you look at all the different ways you are, you have part of your life is represented by each of these 12.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's beautiful. You're drawing all these lines of continuity from my own apprenticeship to my current book, and I so appreciate that because I've probably done about 30 podcasts in the last month, and you're the only one who's doing that line of it. So it
Oh,
keeps me from getting bored.
thank you. Well, I just also wanted one more thing before, if you still have one more minute, I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, I have as much time as you want.
Okay, cool. All right. So my other specific interest, niche interest is Uranus and the Uranus or Uranus, however you want to say. I call it Uranus because the other ways just don't feel good in my mouth. So the Uranus. Do you have any thoughts about your Uranus opposition experience? So when I was reading the Aries part of the Ruby book, man, that story is wild. So like that would have been right around your Uranus opposition time where you lost, unfortunately, your grandparents and your parents, and then you lost your relationship that you were in, and then you gave all of your material possessions away. I mean, this is so Uranian, it's wild. And then you got the motorcycle, traveled across the United States, then took the motorcycle to Europe. I mean, this story is phenomenal. I wanted a whole book just from this story. I'm like, can you
Oh,
please keep going? I loved it, but it just tracks so perfectly with the Uranus opposition. And also, Uranus going through your first house was when you were learning all these things and going to the mystery school. So, Uranus in your chart also, I noticed that it's conjunct your Jupiter, I think,
yeah.
and Jupiter rules your ascendant. So, I feel like that must have been a really profound experience. Do
It
you have any like anything
it
to share
was.
about your Uranus opposition? Because I'm a little obsessed with Uranus
Yeah.
oppositions.
Yeah, it was. And once again, you're really tuned in to my literary career, because I've been thinking in the last year or so, as especially in recent months, as I was closing in on the finishing of this book, that on that motorcycle journey through the US and Europe, it was the last time in my life I kept journals. I wrote of it.
Mm.
And I have about 15 journals, and I thought I should combine those into a book. So you're really tuning in psychically to what I might end up writing about. That thing you wanted more about my motorcycle trip, that might end up being a book. So I'm not sure yet, but I just want to point out how much you're reaching that. I also wanted to say something, because you have questions for me, but I have one for you, which is I
Okay.
have this feeling, and I think I mentioned this to you in a recent email, and this might be something you want to edit out of the broadcast. I don't know. But the feeling is that before I can legally republish 2012 Crossing the Bridge to the Future, I have to change a certain percentage of the text. And I haven't been able to figure out the right approach, but you're so
You
into that
asked
that
me.
you might be able to help me with that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm like, please, please ask me that. Please ask me that. Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. I do have an idea about this because
That's beautiful. And also, you're the third recent person to tell me to forget that title. My son and my wife said the same thing. So when the Virgo high priest disagrees, then I just don't listen.
no, it has to be something titled like,
Thank you for that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much I love about your work, and I think that you do things so differently. And the Uranian part of me like loves the Uranian part of what you're doing because we need something more than just a cookbook.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And to get back to your last question about my Uranus opposition and
Mm.
what was happening to me in that life, thank you for noticing that. And yeah, I wasn't associating that incredible breakaway moment that I describe in the new book, that I compared to that Zen parable, uh,
Mm.
with the monk and the thief. I
Yeah.
wasn't equating that with my Uranus opposition, but you're perfectly correct. Of course, that was just ultra liberation in my own personal journey.
Yeah, and then also Uranus was hitting I believe all through that time you have a lot of planets if I recall that Uranus was hitting the north node and opposition of your south node, opposition north node, south node, whatever it was. But I was like, "Oh, look at Uranus tracking right through." I was like boom
Yeah,
boom 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 and hitting those oppositions and hitting those planets. So I was
yeah,
wondering if you know experience that more because everybody's different, right? Everybody's Uranus experience is going to be different. But
yeah.
where is Uranus? Like which house system do you
I
use?
use Coke.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that would put Uranus in your which house?
in my natal chart, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
In my eighth.
Yeah. Eighth. Okay. That's where I
Yeah,
saw it too. So I'm
yeah.
like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. You know, all of that. But the eighth house feels to me so much like tribalism, right? It's like how are we entangled with others? And that your Uranus experience, it was like boom, 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 all this untangling and liberation experience as well.
It was very, yeah, very powerful. And I was glad to be able to write about it and to put a photo of my motorcycle in there, just kind of relive the whole thing.
Do you still have the motorcycle?
I don't, I don't. I sold Blackie back in
Like,
2001, I think it was.
oh man.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. I want everybody to know about where to find your book, where to find you, because you're amazing.
Well, thank you. And here, just to give your viewers a shot of the book,
There it is.
The Ruby Heart of the Dragon, except it looks backwards. Does it look backwards?
No, it's
No,
perfect.
okay. Oh, it looks backwards to me.
Yeah, it's
And
perfect.
yeah, and I appreciate you, Lindsay. You ask really necessary things, and I like the way your mind runs. And I'm happy to come back and speak with you again anytime you want me to.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.